They landed at the Hillsborough airport, rented a car, and arrived at the bed and breakfast at 4 a.m. There was a new clerk at the front desk who had never met Ramous. She asked them if they had a reservation and she would charge them for the night if they wanted a room. Ramous asked if the lighthouse was available. She said it was not. Emily came walking out from the kitchen. She hurried over and hugged both Ramous and Zoe. "Hi you guys. Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "Well, we like surprises. Is the lighthouse suite vacant tonight?" "Yes, it's empty until the next week, but we can move those people to another room if you like." "That would be great. We're tired and need to get to sleep. Mike and another friend will be here this afternoon, and I want to be alert when we meet." "Ramous, Zoe, please meet Sylvia, our new night auditor, Clark." Sylvia was embarrassed she didn't know who Ramous was. They greeted each other. Afterward, Ramous and Zoe went up to the suite and then to bed. They both slept until noon. When they came downstairs, Peter was waiting for them. When he saw them, he hurried over and gave them both a hug. "Ram, do you want to go up to the office and go over the books?" "I guess we can do that." Zoe stayed downstairs and joined Emily in the kitchen. As they entered the room, Peter said, "Sit, Ram, we have been doing great. We have been doing 70,000 a month, which is 60,000 over your requirement. Emily is an excellent manager. She's keeping the place full, and we're getting married. Next, I'm thinking you should invest those revenues in property. There are several properties along the coast for sale. Some of them could rent for upwards of $400 a night. There's one I'm interested in buying. It sits just behind the Blue Gull Inn in Cannon Beach. It's a white 2-story home with a guest house on the property." Ramous cut in, "I love that house. I have been keeping an eye on it myself." "What are they asking for it?" He responded, "They're asking $950,000 for the property. So far, our year-to-date revenues are up around $600,000 after expenses and projected taxes. I'm certain we'll exceed $950,000 before the end of the year. So, what do you think?" Ramous mused about how that kind of money was like pocket change now. He expected between him and Zoe, they had just over $2 billion. Ramous said, "Do it, Peter, you already have the power of attorney. Go ahead, and make those kinds of decisions, do what needs to be done. Don't worry about asking me. There are a lot of good properties on the coast to purchase. Just be smart about it. Remember, if nothing else, you're going to pay taxes on them. Don't become tax poor." "All right, thanks, Ram. Now, did you say you and Emily are getting married?" "Yes, we're getting married next January, if I can hold off that long." "What do you mean?" "Ram, she's a young, beautiful woman. Let me tell you this, Peter. We have become friends since Zoe broke your neck. Do you want me to have her do it again? I'm sure if I asked her, she could do it in such a way you would be getting married from your hospital bed. You do what it takes to love that woman through respect. The physical relationship will come in time." "I realized that, Ram. Are you forgetting our little ordeal in the warehouse on 162nd? I refuse to do anything stupid after that." Ramous laughed. "I almost wished I was standing where you were when that happened. All I saw was smoke. When you two get married, I want to pay for your honeymoon. Just say where you want to go, and I'll pay for it. Zoe and I have a perfect little vineyard in Tuscany. It's the perfect place for a honeymoon." "Tuscany? What have you been up to, Ram?" "Oh, a little of this, a little of that. You will love it there." Neither Peter nor Emily knew what the Gens situation was, much less Ramous and Zoe, and Ramous wanted to keep it that way. By the time the two came back downstairs, Mike and Silver were standing in the lobby. Ramous turned to Peter, "I'll talk to you later. Oh, and you better put a cash offer in on the house as soon as possible. It won't be on the market for long and we'll end up in a bidding war. I want you to win that war." Ramous greeted and motioned Mike and Silver to follow him. "Gentlemen, let's sit out on the back patio." Emily asked and took orders for lunch. Ramous had tomato soup and tuna sandwiches, with pickles mixed in. Once set in front of him, he asked, "Did I marry the right woman?" Zoe reached for the back of his neck. He stopped her in time. Although the Gens could break the neck with just a pinch, they could also knock a person out with a similar pinch to the back of the neck. Ramous said, "Silver, the Gens need legal counsel. We hope you will accept a retainer and come to work for us. We need you because of our situation, and the group trusts you completely. Honestly, we would like to set you up in business on our behalf. A lot of things have happened since we talked last." Ramous explained to him about the money, the concealed accounts, the Israeli citizenship, and the new corporation. He had no problem trusting Silver with any information, who was a good defender and friend to the Gens. "I'm still working with the USAG's office on all the indictments and settlements regarding St. Paul. St. Paul is as strong as they have ever been. So far, the USAG has only prosecuted those tied to the Angel Project. St. Paul was involved with so many other research projects. If the whole company were brought down, it could cause a worldwide depression. You have heard the term, too big to fail. That's St. Paul. It has been a lot of effort working through the mess. On a good note, we have wiped the Gens from existence. We found thousands of documents related to their activities and other pertinent files. We destroyed them all." "That's good news, Silver, but we could use you now. Can you recommend another person you can trust? I guess they don't have to know about the Gens, but we're involved in some shady business with Israel. Unfortunately, we can't trust anyone else, and we're in desperate need of legal counsel. Jerome is available?" "Oh. Wow. Really? He's perfect. Poor guy. St. Paul has done a number on him. They accused him of everything from starting the Angel Project to stealing waste paper from the waste basket. St. Paul had a judge in their pocket who put him in jail for 6 months. The judge could have sentenced him for a much longer period. The purpose was to destroy him. They didn't take his license, but they made sure he couldn't get a job at a car wash should he need to. That man is intelligent. He's a fantastic lawyer, one of the best I have seen, and that's why St. Paul hired him in the first place, and why he rose through the ranks so fast. They hired him because he was an expert in international law. He also controlled several global operations for the corporation." Ramous asked, "Where is he now?" "He's in the New York Correctional Facility, but will get out next week. I offered to let him stay with me. I also offered him a place on the team prosecuting St. Paul, but he wants to get away. He's worried St. Paul will put him right back in jail. I suggest he's your man. He has more experience and knowledge about international law than I do. Okay, with your recommendation, we will offer him the job. Could you approach him for us? Even if we contract with Jerome, we still need you to be on retainer here in the US. Would you consider that too?" "Yes, I will consider it, and I'll talk with Jerome. I'll draw up a new contract, retainer, and send it to you. Perhaps when I'm done with St. Paul, I'll join you." "Well, Silver, I'm sorry to bring you to Oregon for nothing. I hope you stick around for a while and hang out with us." "It's my pleasure. I'm happy to see the both of you. You look happy, and that's important. Then there's Mike. We talk at least once a week. Perhaps you will keep him busy for a while, and I can get my work done." He laughed. "Mr. Durant, you're lucky I don't call collect. Ramous, I no longer work for anyone. Do you have a place for an aging beach bum in your corporation?" "Yes, Mike, I hadn't planned to go back without you. Do you have your passport?" "Yes, I had hoped for a while to join up with you guys, so I kept everything ready to go." Although Silver wanted to stick around for a few days, he needed to get back to Washington, D.C. for a hearing the day after next. So, he left for Portland later in the afternoon. Mike went home. He was living in an apartment a mile from the bed and breakfast. He took the next day to settle his business and planned to come back the day after tomorrow with whatever he was taking with him. Both Ramous and Zoe were unhappy about the situation of both Mike and Jerome. Hopefully, they could convince them to come to work for the corporation. The couple took a long-awaited walk on the beach. It was a beautiful evening with the sky orange and blue, and the waves whispering to the surf. They held hands the whole time. As they were walking, Zoe heard the sound of distress. They found a clump of seagrass with several sticks lazily piled in front. As she moved the sticks, a small mixed dog came out and tried to pull them back. She could tell the young female dog had just given birth. They walked around to the backside of the seagrass to find a litter of newborn pups lying in the sand. Someone had abandoned the little mass of matted fur. She couldn't have been over 4 pounds and was so thin from starvation. There was no way the mother dog could keep those pups alive. Once the mother realized they wouldn't harm them, her tail went into high gear, wagging. Zoe cried as she petted the mother and checked the pups to find out if they were all alive. "We need to do something, Ram. We need to do something now." All the while crying. "I'll run back to the resort and get a box. I'll come back, and we can load them up and take them home." Ramous agreed with her. He positioned himself in the sand to comfort the young mother until Zoe got back. Once in the box, they took the whole litter of 8 pups back to the beachcomber, at which time they fed the mother small amounts of food as not to make her sick. After about 10 minutes, after eating, she nursed the pups. They moved them up to the lighthouse suite and repeated feeding her through the night. Zoe said, "They are going back with us, Ram. We can't leave them here. I'm sure we can sneak them through customs. We can hide them in an overhead compartment." The next night Maggie and her family came by for a private dinner on the back deck. She chewed out Ramous for dumping his job on her, but confessed she enjoyed it. Hank took Ramous on another tour of the new cabins. "You know, Hank, I had forgotten all about these until you and Maggie showed up. You did a wonderful job." "Thank you. It was fun and my pleasure. Seeing your expression regarding them is a bonus." Everyone talked into the evening, mostly about whether Ramous and Zoe might return to Oregon. The answer still eluded Ramous. He knew it was his choice, and Zoe will go along with whatever he decided, but he wasn't ready to commit either way. He found it troubling, because he figured he'd have an epiphany telling him what to do, but he was no closer to a decision than he was back in Madrid. Ramous said, "You will need to come to Europe and spend time with us. We're still getting the corporation set up, and once that's finished, both Zoe and I'll have lots of free time to show you around." They agreed and said they're looking forward to doing so. Hank, Maggie and the kids stayed late as they built a campfire on the beach, and roasted marshmallows. When everyone left, Ramous and Zoe checked on the mother and her pups, then returned to the beach to pick up the conversation they had while standing next to the 55-gallon barrel, on fire, next to the hangar in Madrid. Zoe asked, "Well, hun, what do you think? Do you want to move back here?" "I can't make that decision, sweetheart. It's nice being back here, but I'm already missing Madrid, even sleeping in the coaches. What I'm thinking about is the vineyard in Tuscany. I love it there and it's always popping up in my mind. I could imagine us living there, making cheese or something, and the occasional tourist spending the night. Although it's so peaceful here, and there it's so exciting. I want both." "Me too," she kissed him. They didn't mention their living conditions the rest of the evening. They just relaxed next to the fire, holding one another until they almost fell asleep. Mike came by the next morning. He gave his notice, packed his things, and said goodbye to his apartment. The three left for the Hillsborough airport that afternoon and flew out early the next morning. They arrived in Madrid the next day in the afternoon. When they arrived, there was a group of Gens meeting with Mark, Dee, and Carrie. Carrie had come back to Madrid for a week to collect additional information from several Gens. Once Zoe walked into the hangar with her box of puppies, everyone mobbed them. Everyone was saying they wanted one. She explained to them they were still newborn and not able to leave the mother. She took names and said she would contact everyone in 12 weeks if any still wanted one. Zoe named the mother Honey. Mark left the crowd and asked Zoe and Ramous to meet with him in the office. After they sat, Mark said, "This last Holstein pickpocket fell through. Someone stole the money out from under us. Julie says only a Gen with a high level of experience could have taken that money." Zoe asked, "How curious. Did they use the French branch as the receiver?" No, they used another bank altogether, unrelated to CIC. They used a bank in Egypt. It was the Commerce Bank of Cairo. We caught them during a brief twinkle of an eye as they wiped the trail clean, during which we collected a phone number in Cairo. Someone left a phone number in the transfer. It would be untraceable once the trail evaporated. We have been too afraid to call it. It could be a trap. We're not sure if it was a coincidence, or they saw us coming. We're assuming it was a coincidence, but the number could only have been a message according to Julie. What do you think? Zoe said, we should use a burner and call the number? We can always say we dialed the wrong number and hang up. What can it hurt, and why haven't you done so already? Mark said, we wanted time to consider it, and we have been so busy setting the group up with their new identities, and, okay, we were afraid to call the number? We were afraid we were being baited. Do you want to call? Sure, I'll call now, she said, got up and went into the other office to retrieve a burner. Zoe called the number. It rang 6 times before a man answered. Hello, hello. May I ask who this is, please? Say nothing else, Zoe. This is a secure line. I'm excited you got my message. Zoe's face turned white as she listened. This is Truman, and I'm not alone. We need your help. There are 11 of us. If you can, please call me back in 8 hours. I should be able to talk then. Please, Zoe, call back. Have a good day, sir. Zoe bent over the trash can and threw up. Ramous asked, is everything all right, Ian? Who was that? She looked at them and said, it was Truman. Mark responded, Truman? Truman's dead. This is a trick. No, it was Truman. It was him, his voice, and I'm positive it was. He said they need our help, and that there are 11 of them. I'm to call him back in 8 hours and then he can talk. Truman was the #1 second general. He was the most advanced thinker of all the Gens. They presumed he and his team died in the Seattle explosion. Mark asked the other Gens and specialists to join them in the office, and got Julie on the speakerphone. Once he told them about the phone call, and who it was who left the number during the failed transfer, everyone gasped. Julie said, you know, he's the only person who could pull it off. That's why I concluded it must have been a Gen, and one with advanced skills. Mark answered, well, what does everyone think we should do? Should we trust it was Truman, and he needs our help? Truman has never asked for help in the past. It's always the other way around. Who could put him in such a situation? Zoe said, it was him. We should hear him out. He can't trace the call, so what can it hurt? The group agreed Zoe should call the number back and listen to what the person on the other end had to say. Truman could be such an asset to the Gens. Everyone returned to processing the Gens, going over where they wanted to live, what kind of work or business they planned to start. It was funny how Carrie had to remind so many Gens about themselves. They were used to operating under aliases, but never under their own names. That evening Zoe called the number back and put it on speaker. The rest of the group listened in. Truman answered, hello. Hello, Truman. It's nice to hear your voice, Zoe. I bet you thought I was dead. My team was not at the Seattle complex when it exploded. We were on special assignment in Columbia, with exception of Martin, who was in the building. We do miss him. Well, when the rest of us got back from Columbia, St. Paul was under scrutiny and they already moved the rest of you to Guantanamo. Congressman Cannon fled the U.S. taking Penny with him. I could mention chloroform at this point. He forced the rest of us to meet him in Paris, and from there they have moved us to Cairo, where we are now. Look up the greenhouse business section there. I heard Cannon say 51 over the phone, but we don't know where Penny is or her condition. He's holding her life over us, making us do his bidding. We can't get by ourselves long enough to create an operation to find her. Please find her for us. Once you have found her, we will deal with Cannon and his cohorts. Will you please help us? Once the group heard Truman's plea, they all agreed it was Truman, and they needed to help him. Zoe answered, yes Truman, we will help you. Just leave it to us, we'll deal with this and contact you once we have her. Then Mark asked, what about the bank transfer you interrupted? Did you do that on behalf of Cannon? No, I needed to get a message to you. I saw the assets of this guy, Holstein, disappearing. I have been reading a lot of conspiracy and obscure newspapers and recognized the signature of Agen's work. Iran is pretty upset. I figured you would go after the rest of his stuff, so I put a worm on that account. Once anyone accessed it outside the account manager, the worm was activated, taking the money and leaving the phone number. If I didn't take the money, I'm afraid you wouldn't call. You can have it. I only put a temporary hold on the transfer and inserted my number as the contact. Just attempt to access the account again. Only use the password freedom when asked. Once you do that, all the pertinent information will present itself, and you can retrieve the money, but you better hurry. Then, he said, it's so good to hear your voice, Mark. I heard you were dead, and I was sad, you sneaky human. Tears filled Mark's eyes. It's good to hear you too. We'll get right on it and find Penny, goodbye. Where would they find her? Mark figured they probably kept her in France. Cannon would worry if she was too close, and Truman's team found her, he'd be a dead man. So, they planned to start their search in Paris. Mark asked Zoe and Kat to conduct the search, but before they did, Kat called Mel to tell her what happened. Mel wanted to get involved. It was late, and everyone went to bed, although no one could sleep, except for Ramous, who was out before his head hit the pillow. The next morning, he and Zoe had a conversation. I'm sorry to leave you behind, Honorable. I don't have a choice, we need to help Truman's team. Then, she said in a sweet, would you do this for me, voice, do you mind taking care of the pups? Ramous laughed and agreed, as if he would abandon them otherwise. Both Aaron and Mel flew in. Aaron got them set up in the Israeli embassy. That helped a great deal because when they found Penny, they could take her there if they needed to, and she would be safe. The four of them were given rooms at the embassy. Once settled, they immediately went to work looking for Penny. Zoe said, Cannon has an office or compound here in Paris, in the Greenhouse business district. Truman said the number 51. They asked one of the ambassador's French assistants if he knew of the Greenhouse district. He said yes and gave them directions. After walking around for an hour and a half, they saw two expensive BMWs sitting outside a large self-storage area. The number on the door was 51. Aaron said, this is it? They peeked through the door where a security guard was sitting at a desk. Cannon turned the storage unit into an office complex. Aaron entered and asked the security guard if the unit belonged to Congressman Cannon. The officer went for his weapon, but Aaron put him out quietly. As they got further into the unit, they saw in the back a woman sitting in a cage, on a bench, with her head tucked in her knees. When she lifted her head, Mel said, that's her. There were two guards just outside the pen they kept her in. Zoe and Kat talked as they approached the two guards. Zoe said, are you sure this is the right storage unit? It doesn't look like one. Kat answered, I'm positive. Marcus told me it was Unit 52. One guard stood up and confronted them, telling them the Unit 52 was the one next door. They argued with him until the other officer joined in. At that moment, both Kat and Zoe knocked the guards out. Mel, looking through the cage, said, hi, sweetie. Penny lifted her head again, got up and ran to the door and said, I thought you'd never get here. What took you so long? Mel answered, well, sweetheart, we had to eat breakfast, you know it's the most important meal of the day. We can't show up looking pale and hungry. Are you okay? Yes. They only beat me on Tuesdays. So, I'm good for another couple of days. Oh, be sure you turn off the switch on the wall behind you. I don't want anyone to get electrocuted. They opened the door, and everyone hugged each other. Penny even hugged Aaron. They stripped the guards of their weapons and communication devices. Zoe said, we need to call Truman before we leave. If they call before we do, who knows what might happen on the other end. Zoe pulled a burner from her pocket and dialed Truman. He answered, hello. Zoe handed the phone to Penny. "Hello, Truman. I missed you. Are you okay? Did Zoe find you?" "Yes, they found me minutes ago. We wanted to contact you before these goons, they had standing over me, could contact anyone else." Zoe took the phone and told Truman he was free to deal with Cannon as he saw fit. "Truman, before you do anything crazy, just give him a chance to repent, okay?" "All right, Zoe, I will," he said as he hung up. They took Penny straight to the plane and left for Madrid. In the meantime, Julie retrieved the money from the account Truman set up, and was on the phone with Levitt asking what he wanted done with his share. He told her to put in with theirs, and he would give her an account to transfer it to at a later time. He needed to determine who will get the money. He refused to be selfish and wanted to place money in other governmental accounts. Mark asked all the Gens to meet in the hangar. He wanted them all there when Penny arrived. He wanted them there when the rest of Team 1 arrived too. When they got back to Madrid, Zoe called Truman again. His team was already making their way to the airport to get out of town. "Do you have money, Truman?" "Yes, we have a good amount of cash. And we're in a van driving towards the border." "Okay, don't do anything else until I call you back." Next she called General Levitt and asked if he could have the military meet them at the Egyptian border. He said he would send them right away. She called Truman back and told him to drive to the Israeli border at Rafah. The Israeli military will meet them there and lead them to the airbase in Rehovot. The next morning, another C-130J arrived at the hangar. Everybody walked out to meet it. No one knew it was coming, and the general didn't forewarn them. The same young officer exited the craft and said, "We have another shipment for you, do you want us to drop it here?" Mark asked, "Can we see what's in it first? We may need to unload it at another hangar." The officer lowered the tailgate, at which time Truman and his crew came walking out. Penny ran up and jumped into his arms and kissed him. Mark looked at Zoe. "Now, I understand why and how Truman could be put in that position." There were hugs all around. It was like a homecoming. No one could say enough or say it fast enough. Ramous doubted anyone understood one another. Mark asked the young officer to taxi the plane over to the other hangar. Truman and another man from his team went back on board to collect 2 suitcases. Then he asked, "Mark, where can I put these?" "You can put them in the office. They will be fine there." "What are they?" "It's information about St. Paul that Cannon kept in his office safe. You will find it both interesting and disturbing at the same time. We can go over them later." "Okay, there's a closet in the back right corner. Put them there." Mark, Ramous, and Zoe took one of the coaches to the other hangar. He asked Truman and Penny to join them so they could debrief them. The rest of his team stayed behind to visit with their fellow Gens.